Awesome. Wow, we have some punctual people. That's awesome.
Love to see it.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We'll be getting started in a few minutes, probably at the 03 mark, 103, 10:03, 12:03, depending on where you are. And I'm excited to discuss with you all today.
Me too. I'm very excited. It's a sunny day in San Diego. Good sign.
Cloudy over here on the East Coast, but I'm excited for the fall weather, so I won't complain too much.
You're right. That is something I sincerely miss, is like the changing of seasons, that vibe. It does feel a little bit like deja vu in San Diego every day when you wake up. So yes, I'm envious of the fall vibes.
Oh yeah. Hearing someone from the West Coast say, I'm envious of anything from the East Coast just sounds really hilarious.
Yeah, true. Yeah, we'll talk in December time, then that's when you can come back and talk to me.
Awesome. All right. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We'll be getting started in just 2 more minutes and we'll be able to kick off our live Q&A with Lauren. How's everyone feeling? You can track some moods in the chat. Awesome. Love all the good vibes. Perfect. Awesome. I give folks just 1 more minute and yeah, the new season. My allergies love it, but my allergies hate it, but my hair loves it. So it's just, who knows?
Double-edged sword.
Awesome. Alrighty. 1 more minute. Like some background music. Good Jeopardy.
Exactly.
Awesome. Alrighty. Well, let's get this going. We're excited to kick off our very first Ask a Seer Recruiter live Q&A on how to prepare and ace your digital agency interview with our very own Lauren Boyd.
Thanks for having me.
Before we get started, we'd like to give a quick introduction, share a bit about ourselves. So feel free to share a bit about you in the chat, drop your name, your current job title, your desired job title, and I'll just kick off the introduction. So my name is Kalu Alel. I am marketing manager here at Seer. I spend my time managing and executing Seer's distribution channels, so email, paid, social, and I am the inbound recruitment marketer here at Seer. So I spend a lot of time with Lauren and the people team. And one little fun fact is Lauren's the reason I'm here at Seer. Before I had my first interview as an intern, I reached out to Lauren for advice and she gave me all the best advice. So I'm super excited for her to share all the nuggets she shared with me, with you all. And I won't spend too much time talking about her. I'll let her share a little bit about herself.
Well, you are far too humble because that was all you. I can take zero credit there. Hi, I am Lauren. I have been with Seer now for 6.5 years. I actually started in our Philly headquarters, been out here in San Diego for 3 years, so I've been lucky enough to work in both offices. I recruit mostly for SEO, analytics, client engagement, and business strategy, but I have recruited for all teams during my tenure here. I jokingly say you have about a 50% chance of interviewing with me as your first touch point with Seer. So maybe we'll even get the chance to see each other again if some of y'all get to applying. So thanks again for joining the webinar.
Awesome. Just a little bit of housekeeping. So how we'll be spending the next hour. So as you guys started to sign up, we were asking you, what would you like to hear from Lauren? So we kind of tailored our presentation around the questions that you all sent. So Lauren will be spending the better first half of the hour going over the best practices she's learned over the thousands of interviews that she's conducted in her career. And then, of course, you guys are here for the live Q&A. You guys want to ask the questions, answer any question that you guys have on your own personal job search journey, anything around the current market, you name it. So we'll spend the last 20 minutes or so just having you guys come off mute and answer any questions that you may have for Lauren, but you don't have to wait for that. So if you guys can look at the bottom, you see a Q&A functionality there. You can go in and drop any questions you guys have. We have another member of our People Ops team, Emily Minkins, in chat there to answer any questions that you guys have. So we'll start to comb through and see which ones we'll answer in chat and then which ones we'll save for Lauren at the end. And then, of course, following the webinar, you'll receive a full recording and all additional resources via email. And included in that email will be a survey link, some job openings that we have at Seer and with our friends, and then any additional questions that you guys may want to ask Lauren. I'm handing it back over to you.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I figured we could get started with the presentation. Figured you're going to drive Kahlua, but first wanted to start off just by sharing what we're going to be going over today. So just to reiterate what Kahlua had already shared, I wanted to start off with a really compelling fact. At the start of 2021, there were over 600,000 open digital marketing roles. And that's amazing. So there is no shortage of opportunity within any channel of digital marketing right now. This is a really in-demand skill set, to say the least. So I say great news for y'all. But there is a caveat to that. So you might be thinking, what's causing this? So job seekers have a lot more options now. And one of the leading reasons why is because a lot of companies like Seer have moved to offering work from home options, remote options. So now job seekers are able to consider opportunities on a national scale. You're not just limited to, what's within a commutable distance of your house, like we were previously. So a lot more jobs to consider. You have the luxury of being able to be a little bit more selective. So you're not just having to pick what's the best salary I can get within my backyard or 30-mile radius of my house. You are able to find something that's going to be a more long-term fit, something that aligns with your values, taking the more, drawn out approach to this versus just rushing to find the first job that you can get. And then nowadays, when I am extending offers to candidates, it is not uncommon for them to be weighing 2, 3, 4 different offers, which is great news for folks that are job seekers. And it means that you don't just need to accept the first offer that is presented. You're able to leverage those, compare offers, see what the total compensation looks like. So that is great news. But you might be thinking, well, why haven't I landed my dream job? Is there something wrong with me? Rest assured that just because job seekers currently have the upper hand, it doesn't make navigating the job market any less daunting. It doesn't mean you're going to be able to land your dream job in a snap. And I really don't want y'all to be discouraged if you haven't landed your dream job yet. You are competing with candidates on a national scale. So even though there are now national opportunities, there are probably a lot more job seekers and applicants applying to each role. So it is still quite competitive. So give yourself some grace. Do not beat yourself up if you haven't, found that dream job quite yet.
Awesome. We're going to kick things off with an icebreaker before we start to dive into the nitty gritty. So there will be a poll that's launched on your screen, and we just want to understand where you are in your job search as we can start to tailor the content and answer any questions that you guys have at the end. So you should see that pop up on your screen. I'll give you guys it's just a second to answer the question, and then we'll share it with you all just so we can just see how the other participants are doing.
I'm very curious to see the results of this.
I am too. Awesome. People are answering really quickly. That makes me happy. I'll give you guys 5 more seconds to answer, and then we'll share it with everyone. 5, 4, 2, 1. Awesome. I'm ending the poll, sharing the results. So as you can see, folks are like a good, I would say one-third split between I've applied to a few places, I'm just browsing to see what's out there, and then there's a few that's not looking to change roles. I'm hoping those are the Seer team members that are here watching the presentation. I'm gonna hand it back over to you, Lauren. So before any job interview, whether it's digital agency specific or industry agnostic, what should a candidate do before every interview?
Awesome. So I have kind of a quasi checklist that I use for folks, or if they ask, hey, how can I prepare for a job interview? These are my best tips. Preparation should probably be based on the job description. That probably sounds a little obvious, but I'm talking to take it one step further. Print out the job description. If you have a printer at home, review the requirements of the job. I think it's helpful to put check boxes next to things that you already have experience with. Maybe write a little reminder about where you had exposure to that thing. And even more so, highlight the gaps in your background. Oh no, I don't have a ton of Google Analytics experience. And don't fret. I don't think that is an issue. I think it's really important just to be able to speak to how you're leveling up in your time, and being able to share, hey, I'm not quite there on Google Analytics, but I'm currently studying for the exam. I'm slated to take the test at the end of the month. It's something I'm really eager to learn. That's very different than, yeah, I don't have experience with it. So just always being prepared for what you're going to be asked about and having a reason is helpful. Prepare 3 company-specific questions. I think 3 is kind of an understatement. I'd recommend 5+, because I'm jokingly saying this, the kiss of death can be saying, yeah, I don't have any questions at the end. I would always encourage you ask something, but in order to really leave a lasting impression with an employer, I think it's helpful to be able to share specific stories or share specific questions that are going to be super relevant to the company. Sprinkle in the research that you've done. Hey, I saw from Seer's blog post on how to give back with skills-based volunteering and how Seer gives back to the community that, you guys have unlimited volunteering time and that you do volunteering events. That's amazing. Is that something I'd be able to participate in? That's a very different question than, hey, do you do like volunteering and stuff? Like, again, just being able to sprinkle in that you did your homework can really make a question, like take it to the next level. And then prepare 3 anecdotes. So these are good for behavioral interview questions. Tell me about a time when this. Do you have a story for this? Do you have an example of this? To be honest, this can be a time during an interview when I see that deer in the headlights look of like, oh crap, I don't have something ready to go. This is probably my biggest piece of advice. Prepare 3 stories. It could be from your internship. It could be from your college. It could be from anything that would be applicable responses. So then working backwards and thinking about what type of question would this be a relevant example for? Oh, this group project I work on during my internship, I think this would be a good example for working as a team, having to take on a leadership role and managing multiple competing priorities. So then if you're in the interview, and I certainly hope this doesn't happen, but let's say your mind goes completely blank, we've all been there, we've gotten really nervous, then you can fall back on those 3 stories if nothing else comes together. And I think that will make you feel a lot more confident. And then 2 examples of weaknesses. Seer steers clear of this, I guess, cliche, tell me 3 strengths and weaknesses. But in some regard, you'll probably have to speak to a failure, a time you messed something up, things you're working on about yourself. So knowing what those things are, and similar to the previous point, having how you're working to resolve those or how you're working to like level up is really important. So being able to share, hey, something for me has been staying organized and detail oriented. So what I actually did for myself is I made a checklist that I go through at the end of the day of all the required things I need to do. Did I submit my time? Did I email my boss? Did I whatever those checklist items are? I'm using that to hold myself accountable. And that's really helped me to become more organized, more process oriented. Great. That is such a different response than, yeah, I'm not very organized. What are you going to do? Or like, yeah, it's always been something I struggle with. Showing how you're working towards it shows self-awareness. It shows initiative, which are always great things in any job. So research can be the make or break between 2 candidates. And I don't mean you have to pour in hours and hours. You don't have to write a dissertation on the company, but literally 30 minutes before the interview can truly change things. So researching the company, I already alluded to that, but the company website, I'm thinking about Seer. Man, we have case studies, blog posts, we have employee bios about each person. That's a wealth of knowledge, and it really helps to show what's important to the company. What are they showcasing a lot of? Their social media. This is a glimpse into a day in the life on the job. You're getting to see more of like that personal side, as well as they usually are sharing events and things like that. So you get to see what's top of mind for them. Employment related sites. So think like glassdoor.com and reading reviews there, industry articles. Maybe they've done a write-up on this company and how they moved to a remote policy and how that's working for them. And last would be awards and recognition. Maybe they were on top best San Diego companies to work for, best Philly fastest growing companies or something. That could be something really helpful to tie into your responses. Research the interviewer. This is really interesting. I've had a lot of people in my personal life and candidates ask me, is it creepy or stalkerish if I like look at that person's LinkedIn and mention something I saw? I'd say quite the contrary. So I think it's a sign of respect if you are researching beforehand, if you're reading up on the interviewer. I would never be upset if somebody said, hey, Lauren, I was reading your blog post that you wrote on, how to turn your internship into a full-time job. I would be ecstatic. I put a lot of time into that. So that is never seen as a bad thing. I think if anything, it helps to establish a connection with them. And even more so, thought leadership. So if they've participated in a webinar like this, a great thing to bring up. If they have spoken at an industry conference, I'm sure that's probably one of the accomplishments that they're most proud of. So tying that in and showing that you did research on them, I'm sure will earn you major points. And then research the role. So not just the job description. I think that's an amazing jumping off point. Then cross-referencing people at the company who have that job title. Maybe looking at LinkedIn, maybe looking at their employee bios. We have those on the Seer website. what are the people's backgrounds like that are in the SEO manager, SEO associate role? Where did they come from beforehand? Is there common themes? Is there things that I could try to get certifications in that I see that all of them have certifications in? So using that as kind of like, I don't know, a research tool. And then if there's a day in the life blog posts, if there's a video vlog series, we did one on our internship program, like 1 second each day from the internship program, that can be quite revealing as well. And again, something nice to reference within the interview process.
Awesome. So folks are feeling prepared. They've gathered all the information they need to leverage either about the company, about the hiring team. What are some interview best practices that a candidate can carry into any interview, whether it's virtual or in person?
Great question. So you might be thinking, man, I'm doing a Zoom interview. That's got to be kind of awkward. I wish it was in person, or I wish it was over the phone. I would actually challenge you. There is a lot of benefits with doing a virtual interview. One of them being the ability to share your screen. Talk about like a mic drop moment. I have maybe seen 4 or 5 people do it over like the last year and a half. Every single time, if a candidate has done it, it's like, wow. If it's a panel interviewer, every single interviewer notes that as like, that took a lot of confidence. I love that they took, the driver's seat and took initiative there, showed me a real life example, walked me through it live. Maybe that's how they'd apply to working with a client. They'd show their screen, they'd be comfortable doing that. I think that's just a really big like power move. Use cheat sheets and do some real-time research. This requires a little bit of finesse. I have a notebook right here. I could have my questions laid out. I could have my notes, and you wouldn't know the difference. Take some subtlety, because I have seen a couple people where it's seemingly reading off a document, or I can see a kind of Googling things in real time, which again, takes some subtlety, takes some finesse. So if you have notes ready to go, if you have your questions, if you have little things you want to hit on, I think that can be really helpful. And that's not a luxury you would have in an in-person interview. And the last piece would be alleviate the pressure of presenting and just being in a group setting, interviewing with 5 people. Candidly, I'd be a lot more nervous for this today if we were all in person together and I was presenting to like 50 people. My voice would be shaky. I'd be way more nervous. It's really nice to have that home court advantage prior to something nerve-wracking like an interview. This morning I was able to do all my rituals, work out, get like all centered. I wasn't having to worry about the logistics of, where's the office? Is there traffic? I'm thinking back to my Seer interview. Can I find parking? Where's the entrance to the building? You're able to concentrate on the output itself. So use that home court advantage. I love Zoom interviews. So there are some things to take into consideration, though, if you are doing a virtual interview. I always tell people you kind of got to compensate for the distance. So when you're sitting next to someone, you can feel them leaning in. You can see their eye contact. You can see like just their overall body language a little bit more. Do they stand up to present? Just their presence. You lose out on that a little bit. So I say compensate. You're going to have to, you might feel a little bit fake at first. It might feel a little bit like over the top, but being more animated, I think, can really be helpful for showing that you're active listening. So like when you're listening, nodding along. When Kalu was starting out the webinar, as like a sign of respect, I'm always like, okay, yes, I'm listening. That can show that you're engaged, you're ingesting what they're saying. Use hand gestures when you're trying to convey excitement, when you're trying to make a point. I like jokingly say like politician hands. So using hand gestures when you're trying to really drive a point home or say, I'm so excited. Again, might feel a little bit awkward. I probably wouldn't be this animated in real life all the time, but trying to keep it engaging. And then don't be afraid to show your personality. There's a time and a place for that too. So maybe you just log on the Zoom and, these plants have been a great conversation starter for me. People frequently will bring those up, ask what kind of plants they are. We'll bond about our mutual love of plants. Another one, maybe at the end of the interview, you get the chance to ask a bunch of questions and you'll say, hey, I see in the back there. So are you a fellow Eagles fan? I see an Eagles sign up there. A great way to establish more rapport with people. Just, I would say it for the beginning or the end. And then actions speak louder than words. So I think this would be universal for any type of interview, but really being able to show that you are taking initiative and being able to quantify that. So instead of saying, I get this a lot. Yeah, I read Seer's blog. I read, SEMrush. I read PPC Hero. Being able to say, hey, I actually have committed at the start of quarantine to reading 2 industry blog posts a week. I actually have a reminder set on Monday and Friday morning to read something. And I've been able to be consistent with that. And that's been really really helpful. So again, showing that you made that intentional goal for yourself, completing certifications. So maybe you graduated and you realized you really wanted to go into digital marketing. You said, hey, I wanted to get my Google Analytics and Google AdWords certification. I kept seeing that all of these different job descriptions. I think that shows a sense of initiative, and there was a why behind obtaining that certification. And then last would be skills-based volunteering, pro bono work. I have a great example from someone that interned at Seer. She didn't have a ton of relevant internship experience in digital marketing, but she wanted to get some hands-on experience. There was a dog shelter right next to our Philly office, and they didn't have a social media presence. They didn't really have a big online presence at all. They just kind of relied on foot traffic. She said, hey, I'm trying to get some exposure to this. Could I just do pro bono? Can I take over your content calendar and all your social profiles for a month? You don't need to do anything. I just wanted to help other people be able to find this dog shelter. I really care about dogs. Wow, was that a really compelling interview example to share? It was also right next door to our office, so it just drove it home to be even more personal. So replicating something like that could be just really powerful. This is another set of common interview mistakes to avoid. And I think this would be, again, universal: phone interview, in-person, webinar, whatever, Zoom interview. I would be cognizant of using I and we interchangeably. Example. Hey, I did an entire Google Analytics to Adobe Analytics migration during my internship. Wow. Oh my gosh. So like, how did you do that? That's really impressive. Oh, actually, it was a team of 10 people and I kind of shadowed them and da, da, da. Then it's like, oh, wait, what if I hadn't clarified with a follow-up question? It kind of makes me doubt the validity of the previous things. Was that actually things you did, or was that a team? Again, this seems like kind of just like an innocuous small mistake to make, but if it's repeatedly coming up, it makes people kind of doubtful of some of the validity. So disregarding time constraints, working on being concise. Candidly, it's the most common reason why people fail the presentation portion of the panel interview with Seer. We put the time constraints in bold letters, 10 minutes max. And I think it's important to adhere to that. It shows respect. It shows awareness. I recommend setting a timer on your phone and even hearing that went off at the end of the presentation. I've seen that noted as a really great thing by interviewers of like, oh, love to see that they were being cognizant of time and they set a timer for themselves. Even trying to practice beforehand and ensuring you stay in time. I've done this countless times where I think I have a 30-minute presentation. Nope, it's 50 minutes where it's all said and done. So that's where practice makes perfect. Speaking poorly about others. I'm actually someone who loves the world of celebrity. I'm going to draw an example. Think about the Hollywood and let's say the Avengers cast. So you'll never catch celebrities talking poorly about their co-stars, their directors, a studio on the record in public. That would be terrible. You do not want to be speaking negatively about people. So I kind of would apply that to an interview as well. I would recommend doing a celebrity type response if you have to say something more critical, and focus on things that were things that you learned through that experience. So two very different responses. Oh man, my internship manager, like I don't even know if she worked. She was so hard to get a hold of, like never responded to me. It was like 2 days follow up later. I feel like we never made a connection, whatever. Then if you were to say, you know what, I really learned through my internship that I really value a more hands-on personal relationship with my manager. I'm someone that values continuous communication throughout the day. I like having kind of touch points at the beginning and end of the day. It doesn't need to be really long, but just to see where we stand. That's really helpful for me. It helps me to feel just connected to the work. Great. Two very different responses, similar sentiments. You're focusing on what you learned from it and what you need moving forward. This is another one that I don't think anyone's ever intending to trap you in. I think if you claim something like, I'm innovative, I'm collaborative, I'm data-driven, people might be curious. Oh, great. Give an example of something you worked on that's super innovative. And that's another moment where it can be super awkward silence of, well, and so don't get caught not having examples to back up what you're going to claim. So you can say, I'm innovative, just be prepared to speak to a project or an initiative you had that was super innovative or thinking outside the box. So don't fall into that trap.
Awesome. So a lot of the tips that we've gone over so far can be applied to any industry, any type of interview, but for those looking for agency-specific roles, what are digital agencies looking for in prospective candidates?
Absolutely. So I have 3 major themes that I pulled out that are digital agency specific. I think this would be things that a lot of employers would care about, but especially digital agency, especially if this is your first agency role, you're making the switch from in-house. So I would say data is paramount. not even just like data in terms of performance metrics, KPIs, just numbers, quantitative measures in general. Think about how in-house versus agency. At an agency, a client's paying you a monthly fee to like outsource an aspect of their work. So they really want to understand what the return on investment is for them. So hence why it's really important to quantify the value that you're driving in your position. Quantify, hey, in terms of revenue, hours saved, new customers acquired, anything like that. And you might think, oh, I don't think I made impact there. I don't think I have like things to share with that. Don't freak out. There's other things you can incorporate. So maybe the scope of your role. Hey, I worked on a team of 5 interns over the course of a 12-week internship program. Great. Even incorporating that helps me wrap my mind around what the program looked like. Metrics and measures of success, whether daily goals you had to hit, weekly KPIs you had to be held to. Was there more annual goals that you had to be held to? What was the measure of success? How did they determine who was good versus great? How did they determine who got a bonus or whatever it might be? And then quantifying your day-to-day. So here, I think it's okay to estimate. You can use that little, I'm so sorry, I don't know the grammatical term for that squiggly thing to estimate. 3 content audits per week, or you can even say approximately 3 to 4 competitive analyses per week. I think that's helpful too, to just see, okay, what was the output? What were they churning out within a certain time frame? And then impact. It could be impact on the bottom line, impact on efficiency. Did you streamline a process or like automate something, and now your team has 3 extra hours in the week that they were previously devoting to reporting? That's like game changing. Did you find a cheaper alternative to a tool that they were using and actually save the company $1,000? So cool. I think those are really, really impactful and would just be equivalent agency type experience. Learning and teaching. I love former teachers, TAs, mentors. It's amazing for agency experience because you're going to have to communicate with a variety of different audiences when you're in a digital agency. As you can imagine, if you're talking to your client's web development team, a little bit of different messaging versus if you're presenting to the executive team, you're going to focus on different aspects. They're going to have different varying levels of technical understanding. So people that have been in teaching roles are used to having to take complex, hard to understand concepts and make it more digestible, make it make sense for their audience, and cater to their style of learning. So love that type of experience. And it doesn't need to be necessarily that you're in a teacher capacity, just showing that intellectual curiosity, showcase how you're continuing to learn. What are you reading up on? That teaching experience. So like I said, a peer tutor, teacher's assistant, are you in a mentor program through your college? I've had people say even like SAT as ACT tutors. I think that's perfect. Training is a huge plus. And it could be internal training, even if it's not digital marketing related. Hey, I'm the person that does all the new hires first day office tour and I take them to lunch on their first day. I think that's great. Maybe you're training them how to use the basic tools of the job. Love that. Client side training, that is huge. I know you wouldn't necessarily have that if you're coming from an in-house type of role, but love that. And then executive team training. Maybe they wanted you to be able to train the executive team on how to leverage Tableau so they could play around with that in their spare time. They didn't have to tap the team in order to be able to figure anything out. So that would be hugely beneficial and kind of would mimic what it would be like to be in an agency. And then the ability to multitask. This would be crucial. And again, this doesn't need to be previous agency experience. Essentially, why we're looking for that, you're going to have to be juggling 4 to 6 at Seer. It could be more at other agencies or less, but at Seer, it'll be 4 to 6 medium-sized, usually enterprise level client projects. And these could be clients in totally different industries. You could be in a higher education client, then move to a financial services client the next hour. And that requires you to be able to pivot throughout the day. It requires you to be able to compartmentalize, manage your time, know how long things are going to take. That is just a crucial skill to have. So some of those things might be, maybe you have a track record of having to be really purposeful with your time. You were a college athlete and you were just used to having your days completely booked. Maybe you are a primary caregiver. I've heard that from a couple people now. Hey, my dad got sick and I've had to step in as primary caregiver, like a huge level of responsibility while you're juggling school or working or anything. Maybe you, I don't know, you're having to coach your friend's soccer team or something. I had somebody do that as well. That requires a lot of time management as well. Passion for something beyond the 9 to 5. And that could be, maybe you're so passionate about, web development that you're a part of the Girl Develop It meetup. Again, does not need to be necessarily digital marketing specific. Maybe you're in a band. I know we have somebody at Seer that's in a band that plays. That's huge. We have a couple people that are bar or flywheel instructors. Amazing. That requires you to manage your time, and that means your weekends are booked as well. You're someone that's used to being on a schedule and having multiple commitments. That's huge. And then managing a side gig, volunteering, love to see that. So maybe you're serving as a freelance web designer. We have a couple of people at Seer that are certified, like photographers. They have whole other businesses. They are. I have somebody that's selling these macrame plant hangers. I got somebody else that's has a cosmetology license and does makeup for weddings on the weekends. It does not need to necessarily be like volunteering per se. Doesn't necessarily need to be digital marketing. I'd say a really ideal scenario might be something like pro bono work within your field. I think that would be the most directly applicable, but don't overcomplicate it. It can be something as simple as, hey, I have this other hobby outside of work.
Awesome. So we've been taking the time to really just give you all tips, but now there's actual interview questions that you guys are asked constantly. So we're going to go over behavior interview questions. Lauren will really dive into really what behavior interview questions mean, why they're important, and then I'll take some time to ask Lauren a handful of behavior interview questions, and then she'll be able to answer what recruiters look for from candidates between those different types of questions. So just to kick us off, behavior interview. How do you judge answers to scenario-based questions?
Wonderful. So we are going to be talking about behavioral interview questions. And like I said, tell me about a time when you had to work on as part of a team. Give me an example of a time that you had to leverage data to inform an argument or recommendation. They're looking for past examples. And you're probably like, man, why am I having to come up with this story? Why can't they just ask me about Google Analytics? Reason being, one of them is we only have like 3-4 hours max with you. So being able to ask questions that will really gauge how you might approach common situations that will occur in the role, that's really helpful for us. And I think is a lot more revealing than just going through a bunch of technical questions. It's helpful in things like role plays, presentations, live interview exercises, just more standardized questions that are based off of real scenarios in the job. That can be super helpful. It helps us to pinpoint what aspects of the role will be brand new to you, what aspects you've already done before, you've had experience, you've had to navigate those situations. That can be helpful for how we staff you on certain projects, what manager we assign you to. Maybe we'll concentrate on something a little bit more during training and taper back on the technical SEO piece because you already have a ton of experience there. So it just really helps us to pinpoint what's new, where do they already have experience. And then it really can help to reveal a values alignment. Or other companies might say culture fit. We want to hear, how do you speak about more junior team members? How do you speak about someone that's not as technical? I've had a couple people be like, oh, and those salespeople or recruiters don't know anything about digital marketing. That can be quite revealing. Are you someone who avoids conflict at all costs? That, even though I understand that it's partly some of that, I think it's good to know just what someone's dynamic is within a working environment.
Awesome. So we're going to dive into a teamwork and collaboration behavior interview question. And Lauren's going to give us just a few anecdotes of what she's looking for from a candidate between this type of question. So describe a time when you struggled to build a relationship with someone important. How did you eventually overcome that? So when you're asking this or other recruiters are asking this, what are you typically looking for a response from?
Yep, good question. I think the beauty with these questions is there is no exact right answer because it's being pulled directly from your experience. Everyone's answer is going to be different. What I'm really looking to hear is empathy. That's one of Seer's core values, actually. Are you taking a solutions-oriented approach? You're not just throwing your hands in the air and saying, that guy's a jerk. I don't know how I'm going to work with him. I'm wanting to hear, did you ask them about their preferred means of communication? Do they like email updates? Do they want to get on a call? If something went awry, do you want me to hop on a Zoom? Did you ask them, hey, how are you leveraging this data or these deliverables that I'm giving you? Because I would love to be able to tailor them to make it as easy as possible for you to go approach your manager for your one-on-one, be able to use this directly as is. We want to tailor it to what's important to y'all. And just seeing that you were trying to find a solution and meet that person halfway.
The question on adaptability and time management. So do you have an example of a time that you failed to meet a deadline? What were the circumstances?
Yep. Another common thing that I think probably anybody has experienced in the working world or being an academic. So, what I really want to hear about here is that you were communicative, and you were communicative prior to the deadline being missed. So, doesn't really have the same effect if 24 hours later you're like, shit, that was late, wasn't it? I think it's better to communicate it as soon as possible once you realize something was going to be late, offering alternative solutions, and then also ensuring that something is in place or corrective action to ensure it won't happen again. Maybe you assign something to an intern to do for a client deliverable. They had a lot of edits to make, and then they weren't able to get to those in time. And now that the report is 2 hours late, I think being able to share, hey, working with our interns, I'm actually going to start to be adding in 1 day of buffer in terms of reporting in addition to what I asked for, just to ensure that we get this to you all on time. I know that's very important to be prompt. So again, putting those solutions in place is really important.
And then the last one on communication and client-facing style questions. Tell me about a time where you had to push a client in a different direction by leveraging data.
So here I'm really trying to see, did you convey the why behind your recommendation? I'm really less concerned with the specifics of the technical piece. Did you provide an explanation of what they'd stand to lose if they don't implement Google Tag Manager, what they'll be able to gain by doing so? Hey, we're going to be able to have closed loop reporting. We're going to be able to see this with what's happening with your customers. Putting it in a way that's going to resonate with them, not just offering them a ton of digital marketing specific KPIs of data that might not drive it home to them. Or maybe even you're sharing, hey, how would, this will take about 12 hours to do. How would you stack rank this against the other things that we have going on? I would say this would probably be number 3. I want to prioritize the website and the Google Tag Manager migration or whatever it is. So I think really being able to share the why versus just straight up saying, no, we're not doing that. Here's some data.
Thank you. That was really, really helpful. I wish I had some of that when I was interviewing, but we're going to hand it back over to you. We're going to switch back into the presentation to wrap that up and head over to the Q&A, and we'll talk a little bit about some best practices, do's and don'ts for your behavior interview questions.
That really resonated with me, Chloe, too, because I knew none of these things. I was guilty of making the majority of these mistakes prior to coming to Seer. I've had the luxury of being able to read the interview feedback from thousands of interviews, talk to the hiring managers, just see a variety of situations. So this is not coming from a place of, hey, I already knew this. This is coming from, wow, I learned this. I feel like I have like some insider scoop that I feel compelled to share. So you're not alone. No judgment here. So test these behavioral do's. So use the STAR method for stories. As someone who tells quite meandering stories in her personal life, I should probably employ this more frequently. So the STAR method is when you're going to go tell a story, it can kind of be just like overwhelming of like, shit, what do I include in here? What details? STAR stands for what was the situation? What was the task? What were the actions that you took? What were the results? It really helps to bring some structure to your story as someone who tends to go on like a bunch of little tiny tangents and like, wait, was this relevant? It's usually not a good sign when you end a story and you say, hey, I don't really know what the initial question was, but here we are. Not usually good. Don't sell yourself short. I have had people almost, I think, be their own worst enemy, where if they don't have an exact one-to-one example for what I had shared, they might just say, hey, I don't have something. I think it's important to call it, hey, I don't think this is a one-to-one equivalent. I don't think this is exactly what you were speaking to, but here's something I did that was kind of comparable. And then just showing, hey, addressing that this isn't the same, but here's something I did that's similar. Pausing before speaking. Another thing I am extremely guilty of. I hate an awkward silence. I just feel compelled to just fill it with some noise. I think there's a lot of confidence that comes with pausing, taking a second. I've had people say, hey, can you give me a second to think about that? Nothing wrong with that at all. I think, limit it to like 10 seconds max. And then also don't say that for every single question, but give yourself a second, compose yourself. Those are really good tips. As you can imagine, there's probably some don'ts, some things to avoid. Similarly, don't badmouth past companies and colleagues. I'll bring it back to that Avengers example. Do not speak negatively about your coworkers, your colleagues. I can't help but wonder, how would you speak about Seer? How would you speak about me if I wasn't in the room? I think it just shows also just a lack of judgment. I jokingly say that a interview is kind of equivalent to a first date. This is the best version of you. This is the most filtered, most prepared version of yourself. I don't know if this person is going to show up 100% every single day to the job, but being able to hear, oh, they were bad mouthing their company and this is the first interview can be kind of alarming. Again, not to say that the feelings you felt weren't valid. I just would package it differently. Don't go on an irrelevant tangent. This is one where I will be asking someone, hey, so tell me why'd you apply to Seer? And then I might get a 15-minute explanation. I'm not saying anything back. They're telling me their life story. And I think you can get on a roll and you're like, okay, I want to kind of share everything I have that's relevant. I would avoid that because I think it can show, again, a lack of self-awareness. You're not necessarily seeing, hey, wait, does the speaker have something else to say? Hey, I've been talking for like 10 minutes and there's been no response back. So just that ability to read the room, I think, is important. And then don't paint yourself as the hero 24/7. I think there's a lot of power and vulnerability. We actually just hired someone where I remembered the interview feedback was, love how they just immediately took ownership of the mistake that they made. They didn't try to push the blame onto someone else. And I think especially if you're asked to give an example, they're not looking for it to be one of those things of like the classic, hey, my problem is I'm a perfectionist or I'm too into work. I think they want to hear a valid example. And then your willingness to take ownership of things. Are you someone that always wants to take credit and deflect blame? I think those are just good things to be mindful of.
And then I think a piece that often folks tend to forget, the follow-up. How to create a lasting impression following the interview. What do recruiters expect from candidates, and what do they typically see from candidates after the interview?
Great question. I frequently think that the questions at the end of the interview that you ask and the thank you notes can really be your make or breakers. Granted, I didn't ever give anybody a job just because they had amazing questions at the end. If there's somebody amazing, I didn't necessarily eliminate them just for their questions, but those can really help you, especially if you're right on the cusp, especially if it's you versus one other candidate. That will really help you to be more memorable. It also shows that you're very interested in the job. So just wanted to start off by sharing that. Make the interviewer feel special. I would avoid writing just one generic 2-sentence email, directing it to everybody. You're pretty much just saying, hey, thanks for having me in today. Hope you see that I'm very qualified for this role. Nobody feels special there. That's just kind of a blanket message. I'd rather you send each person individually a email and call out 1 to 2 specifics about the conversation that resonate with them. Hey, loved hearing how you learned Screaming Frog at Seer, and I really was inspired by how you went and spoke at that conference. That was really impressive. I'd like to do something like that. Wow, I would feel so like heard if I was that person receiving the email. I'd know that was a good investment of my time. And again, I think we tend to cross-reference the emails we receive from candidates. I bet a lot of employers do that. So I always encourage people to do that. Share follow-up examples after the interview. So being able to say in the thank you note, oh, by the way, here's that website that I mentioned that I worked on if you wanted to check that out. I think it shows attention to detail, calling back, kind of bringing the conversation full circle. The next would be give a firsthand glimpse into your work, kind of on a similar note, but maybe you share a link to your portfolio, or hey, maybe you talked about you're both trying to learn Python and you said, hey, here's my GitHub, by the way, you can see how I'm progressing. I think it shows, again, a level of like vulnerability and openness, and trying to keep the conversation going. And then show a little personality, humanize yourself. Maybe you guys both realize, oh, wow, we're both Grateful Dead fans. Maybe you'll write, P.S., by the way, I'm rocking out to this song like Jerry Garcia at the end of it. I'm really aging myself there. But or maybe you guys both realize you have a dog, and you'll show a picture. I've had a couple people do that. Here's a picture of me and Lucy, by the way. I think that just really starts to humanize you, and they start to think of you as a coworker more than just a resume.
Awesome. Well, first, before we jump into the Q&A, thank you for sharing all those tips with everyone. I'm not on a job search journey, but I know if I ever end up being back on one, I'll definitely be pulling some of those tips, especially on pausing before speaking. But it's now the audience's turn to ask any questions. So at the bottom, you'll see a Q&A functionality. You can either drop in your questions there, but if you also want to just come off mute and ask for any questions, you can click the more option in the toolbar and raise your hand, and then we'll be able to unmute you and ask Lauren any questions. But to get folks warmed up, we have pulled a few more questions out from our sign-up form, and we'll kick things off with the Q&A. Hopefully some of these questions resonate with where you are in your job search journey. So Lauren, what's the best way to approach a transition from corporate marketing into agency side?
Yeah, great question. That's probably one of the most common questions I get from folks. So this is not, again, to in any way undermine in-house experience. That's an amazing background to have. We've hired a ton of people that have that in-house background. We're just trying to ensure, will their past experiences set them up for success in a digital agency environment? I think it's really important to demonstrate your consultative chops, show that you've been able to pivot, you have experience managing multiple deadlines, prove the impact of your work. That's where that quantifying thing is going to come into play, that you've had to be held accountable to certain metrics. I think it's really helpful if you have experience presenting to an executive team, trying to get their buy-in on something. That's kind of similar to how it would function in agency with clients. Are you really involved in the strategy development for your department, or have you been the head of some really big, initiatives within the company? I think that would be really great experience to highlight.
Awesome. Another question that we have is someone who's not much of a numbers person. If they're asked, how am I going to measure my success? What should they say?
And rest assured, you do not need to be a mathematician in order to approach work in like a data-driven manner. So while you'll likely have numbers-based KPIs within your role, that's more of just a means of quantifying the business impact that you're making, which is ultimately what stakeholders are going to be more concerned with. So I'm not necessarily concerned with you doing crazy calculations. Please do not be intimidated by the data. I think a lot of times it's as easy as working backwards and seeing, where were you before? Where are you now? Can you attribute that to your efforts? So please don't be overwhelmed by that. I think if anything, just showing a willingness to be willing to learn new things about data, not saying, hey, I don't really do numbers. I think it's about the attitude you have going into that as well. I wouldn't lead by saying that.
And I'm going to stop sharing our screen so folks can see your face to make the Q&A feel a little bit more personal, since that's definitely important in any interview and any webinar. The last question that we have over here for you is, how do you answer this question? Why are you looking for this new job?
Yep, probably a really common question you're going to get on every single interview. I would encourage you to focus on the long-term motivators and what's going to really fulfill you. So maybe what you really want to say is, hey, I'm looking for more money and I'm trying to work remote, which is two very, very understandable things that you'd be prioritizing. I might say, hey, I'm trying to get more agency experience. I've worked all in-house. I'm trying to become a more well-rounded digital marketer. I think this will really help to improve how I consult with clients or team members. I wouldn't lead with anything compensation related, anything about PTO usage. I think those are things to incorporate throughout the interview process. You're allowed to ask that when you get a little bit further. But I think in order to, especially if it's the first interview, to ensure that you keep moving through the process, I might share more long-lasting things. What's going to get you up in the morning? Hey, I'm looking for more opportunities to, train and mentor. I've really found a lot of fulfillment from teaching people, and I don't have a lot of opportunities for that in my role. Amazing. So I think those are the really important things to lead with, even though it's totally valid to be looking for a pay bump.
Absolutely. And then now we're going to switch gears and answer some of the questions that we have live in the Q&A. So Scott T asked, I think it's a Seer team member, so that's fine. But it's not a Seer team member, it's just the same name. As an applicant, how should one handle having broad digital experience, but perhaps not specialized enough for the position they're applying for?
Yeah, and I would say that I totally understand the desire to want to specialize your background a little bit more, especially if it seems like, it's an SEO role and maybe you have some SEO within your background, but it's definitely not like the overall focus area. I think it's kind of like reminds me of like makeup with highlighting, contouring, really bringing it back to all the things that are relevant to me. So being able to showcase the things and bolding them, putting more bullet points regarding your SEO work, putting that in bold letters, showing that at the top, maybe downplaying some of the less relevant experience. Maybe I've had people say like, hey, I was like a lifeguard for part of the summer here, maybe minimizing that. And then also creating a section that says currently pursuing, or what I'm currently learning, or academic pursuits currently. And maybe you're going to write, hey, I'm currently learning SEMrush, currently in a training course for Moz, currently using Search Console, and focusing on the things that you're in the process of learning, and just making sure you're making that relevant experience stand out a lot so that you can at least get your foot in the door. I never recommend falsifying your background or anything, but I think it's a matter of just really focusing on the job itself. So it's not uncommon for folks to have multiple versions of their resume just based on the type of role that they're pursuing.
Awesome. And then Kimberly T also asked, when your background doesn't include strengths of digital marketing with tangible KPIs and Google Analytics, what can you use to convey transferable skills to work with Seer specifically?
Awesome. I'm going to plug a blog post. I know Lena wrote one on how to land a digital marketing job out of college and transferable skills. So we can definitely send that out afterwards. It's a really great read. But like I said, don't think that I'm just saying campaign specific data. I'm talking my sister was like our hers chips tour guide back when she was in high school. I think she quantified like, hey, I conducted 20 tours per day with approximately 12 to 15 people each, had to hit weekly metrics in terms of repeat signups or membership cards. Do not think that it has to be quantifying the impact or click-through rate or anything like that. I think that can be a little daunting. And then showing your sense of initiative with what you're continuing to learn. So really showcasing a section of, hey, I'm in pursuit of these several certifications, showing also that you're with the employer, hey, I actually attended these 4 webinars of Seers to learn more, or other industry events that you've attended to learn more. I think this is too where having a portfolio, having a website might be a really beneficial thing to have, where you can show more of what's still happening, what you're working towards, maybe even other aspects of your background that are more personal that don't feel appropriate for a resume. So I always encourage, if you're doing a career switch, I would put a little bit of the burden on yourself to help show, hey, here's what I'm doing. Here's how I'm going to help kind of meet you halfway on training me. I might not be all the way there on SEO, but look how much initiative I'm already taking. So I would say, don't beat yourself up. There's always a way to incorporate data, and then just showing what you're continuing to learn.
And I think this next question is perfect for you. If Seer or another digital agency pass on you as a candidate, how can you go about reapplying in the future?
Oh my gosh, it's like one of those audience planted questions in like an infomercial. So let me plug my blog post, selfless promotion here, shameless self-promotion here. So I actually wrote an exact blog post on how to go from being a rejected candidate to getting hired. I actually think that getting an initial rejection, if you're able to acquire some feedback, is actually your ticket back in the door. So if you're able to ask, hey, if you can give me, and in a polite manner, this blog post speaks to this, if you can give me some tips on what I could do better next time, where there was opportunity for improvement, not trying to refute the decision. I just want to be able to continue to improve myself as I'm interviewing at other companies. So maybe they share, hey, we wanted to see more experience leveraging data. We wanted to see more sense of initiative with continued learning. Great. So I would say wait at least 3 months. I find it feels a little bit like it fell on deaf ears. If somebody circles back a month later, they don't reference the things that we gave as feedback and are just like, hey, what about now? So I'd say maybe even set a reminder for yourself 3 months, 6 months later, circle back and have a status update to share. I think even better, follow up on that email chain. Don't reapply again. Kind of try to re-engage that conversation. Say, hey, by the way, thank you so much for the great advice. Want to give you a little update of what I've been up to. I've completed these certifications. I've been learning this. In my job, I actually took on this like data ambassador role, blah, 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 blah. Again, you don't have to have crazy progress, but just even showing that like, hey, you told me I need more of that. That's what I went and got. I have always honored that by giving someone another chance to interview in those instances. I can't guarantee you'll get hired, but that is your ticket back in the door. There are tons of people at Seer that like they were declined the first time around, got hired the second time. I think I got lucky. I think if I had applied right out of college, that would have been an automatic no for me. It was my second job. So do not beat yourself up. Do not be discouraged by that. And if you ever want to chat with someone who's gone through that journey, I know there's a lot of people that are willing to be vulnerable and have really found a great path at Seer.
Awesome. And then I have another one from our registration sign up coming from Faith R. What is your favorite question or the go-to question that you always ask someone in an interview?
Ooh, okay. So I like to ask something a little bit unorthodox at the end. So I like to make sure that someone always has the opportunity to share maybe something that's like their legacy at their previous company, something that they're really proud of. I know that sometimes just with the nature of the questions we asked, it might not elicit a response that would be, hey, I want to tell you about this whole charity I started for my friend who was diagnosed with cancer at college. That is something that I think would really resonate with Seer and a lot of companies from a values perspective. So I want to give someone the stage to be able to share something like that. So I'll say something like, hey, just at the end here, I always like to give someone the floor. anything you're particularly proud of, anything when you think back to your biggest accomplishments or anything we didn't cover that you think might be enticing to Seer. I never want someone to feel like, oh, but I didn't get to share this. This is kind of your floor. I've seen people really take advantage of that and be like, actually, yeah, the example I shared, or being able to share, oh, by the way, I was actually nominated for Employee of the Month this month. It was something I was really proud of. And I think that's a great thing to share. So that would be my best words of encouragement.
Awesome. And then another one that we have here coming from the registration is, what employers and recruiters are looking for in a candidate comparing to job skills requirements? Can someone have some qualifications, but maybe flexible and get someone's personality? So essentially, when you're stacking up against two candidates, one may be more qualified with the technical skills, the other candidate may not be more qualified with technical skills, but maybe more of a culture fit and values alignment. How do you really go about choosing between those two? How important is personality when you're looking for a prospective candidate?
Great question. And I would say, as is probably the default recruiter answer, it really depends. We're seldom making these decisions in a vacuum where it's just like personality, qualifications. It's usually incorporates everything. In my experience, depending on the role level, and especially for like associate roles, internship levels, I would much rather take a chance on the candidate that has shown a ton of initiative. Someone that is clearly, if I hire them and give them that chance, they're going to continue growing. They're the type of person that like, hey, I give you the wheel, you're going to drive. So I really tend to want to favor someone that has shown, and not personality of like, do I like you? Do I want to have a beer with you? I just want to clarify that not in that way, but like, are you a teammate that goes above and beyond and has their team members' backs? Are you someone that takes their client relationships very personally and will go to the end of the earth for them? Those type of things, and a sense of like, I don't know, intellectual curiosity, wanting to learn. I'd be more inclined to want to select that candidate versus someone that's deeply qualified, but isn't invested in their work, isn't a great teammate. And again, it's very difficult because these decisions are not made just independently. Seer is a structured interview process, actually. So there are standardized questions, there's rubrics we grade people on, there's every single candidate presents the same thing. So at least we're comparing people as objectively across the board as possible, trying to be as unbiased and data-driven in our approach. But ultimately, for when it comes down to one or two people, when everyone's talking in the room together, I think a lot of times the one with the more sense of initiative and being proactive will beat them out. But just anything people related is a big, it depends. You can't say consistently. So I think that's where your sense of initiative, being proactive, all these little things, but doing your research, showing that the company is a top employer for you by, hey, incorporating all these blog posts I read, reaching out to people, I think that can really be your ace in the hole.
It depends. I think all marketers are so used to saying that, so I think they're fine with hearing it. And the last question, that's not really interview specific, but just folks that are interested in Seer, what's the one thing you enjoy most about being at Seer?
Ooh, good question. I get this a lot on interviews. So I will say that in my 6.5 years at Seer, I think I've ascended to a best version of myself personally, professionally, that I never would have reached otherwise. I would attribute that to things like unlimited PTO for volunteering. I'm embarrassed to say I wasn't volunteering a lot before Seer. Now it's on a weekly to bi-weekly basis. I can't imagine going a long period of time without volunteering. I've loved working with HopeWorks, Spark, Father Joe's. That's brought a lot of meaning to my life, and being able to do that during core business hours has like definitely changed me as a person. If I ever have kids someday, I would want to raise them with volunteering throughout their entire life. So that's been amazing. Intellectually, I wouldn't have been seeking out speaking engagements or running webinars had I not been in an environment like Seer that encourages that. So not from a perspective of being hyper competitive, but just you're encouraged to do that. You're encouraged to innovate, test new things. I have really appreciated that they give you the space to try new things, even fail, but as long as you learn something from it, that's been huge for me. I've made a lot of lifelong friends, which again, I don't like to focus on in the workplace. I'm not going to say we're a family, which I think is very cliche, but it's really been the most game-changing thing to my adult life. And I really thank Seer for, I think, making me the best version of myself, personally, professionally, all around. I've learned a lot of great cooking tips and plant tips as well from people here.
That is awesome. That is amazing. And I totally agree. Lauren is the best. And I just want to do a quick sign off. I just want to thank everyone for joining, for staying on, for asking any questions for Lauren. There's just a few resources that you guys can have following up. So of course, you guys all will be receiving the recording and deck to this presentation. But in the meantime, you can subscribe to our career roundup. So that's when we send monthly career tips job openings, professional development tips. Then of course we have our career growth resources. So a section in our blog post dedicated to all of helping you all level up in your career. We plugged in a few of the blog posts today. Then of course, if you are still actively looking and interested in a role at Seer, we are looking for you. So definitely apply. You can definitely chat with one of our recruiters, maybe Lauren, if it's one of those divisions that she spoke about. And just again, thank you. Thank you, Lauren, for all the amazing tips, and everyone enjoy the rest of their day.
If you're nervous heading into the interview, know that I had to change my outfit 2 times because I was sweating so much nervously beforehand. So this is kind of the equivalent of like imagining people naked when you're giving a presentation to make you less nervous. So just imagine I've sweat through a lot of clothes prior to this presentation. So I hope I'll get to interview
you
some of you.
Black.
Woo!
Exactly.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday.
Bye.